Yet another exercise, and this is very important for clustering because we have been missing it. So far, both of our Tomcats contain their own embedded Elasticsearch server, which means if we upload a document on one server, it will be indexed there. But if you search for that document on the second server, you won't find it because it's not indexed on that server. And, by the way, an embedded Elasticsearch, while it works, can't really be tuned, so it's also not supported in production environments. Running Liferay DXP, you want to have a supported environment, which means even if you don't run a cluster, you want to run with an external Elasticsearch and rather connect to that instance rather than having one embedded. Now, what do we do? Let's look into the instructions. We'll look for our Docker file that we have prepared for Liferay Tomcat 1 and 2. This is already prepared to have an Elasticsearch configuration in there. And you see again the very well-known configuration pattern. This is a config file, so it's an OSGI configuration, and we can easily look at it. This line needs to be added so that we have the proper configuration for Elasticsearch to be referring to an external file. I'm saving this, and then we will look at the content of that file, which is here. There we are, operation mode remote. Then we have the transport address, and we have the cluster name, and that's it. So note, Elasticsearch is a name that will be resolved through the magic of Docker, of the Docker network, to whatever host it is on. And we give it a name so that we can store all of our content in the same environment, in the same cluster name. Now, that being said, we will need to build an Elasticsearch container, and lucky enough, this is already prepared. And see, we have a Docker file in here. We haven't ever looked at it yet, but running an Elasticsearch is a very simple operation. We will just need to install what we have here, copy the config files, and let's quickly look at the config. The configuration here. There you'll see the same cluster name again. We'll have a node name. We will be happy with only one Elasticsearch server. If you're properly clustering, well, then you actually want to have an Elasticsearch cluster as well. This is left as an exercise for the reader because we are in a Liferay course and we are telling you how to set up Liferay DXP and not how to properly cluster Elasticsearch, just as with HA proxy and with MySQL. This is infrastructure for us. So just refer to the Elasticsearch documentation for information on how to cluster it. Now, the next part that we need is we need to make the Elasticsearch machine available to our Docker instance, and there we're going to look for the configuration in Docker Compose. And you'll see here that we have a name, we'll have some environment options, we will connect it to the same network. We will also make the port available, or the ports that Elasticsearch runs on, to our host, which we, well, don't actually need, but this way we can access the Elasticsearch instance as well from our host. That's basically it, and naturally we need to persist some data, and that happens to be in user share Elasticsearch data in the image that we are building on. Finally, in order to start all of our Tomcats, we will need to make them dependent on Elasticsearch. So right here in Liferay Tomcat 1, you see that we have prepared this dependency for you. So we'll need to remove the comment sign here, and I'll copy this line, scroll a bit down, and detect that Liferay Tomcat 2 has no dependency so far. So I'm going to copy this Elasticsearch dependency here as well. This being saved, and now we are dependent on Elasticsearch in both of our Liferay Tomcats. We have an Elasticsearch server configured, and that means everything is configured correctly. Let's just see, we didn't start anything up. Let's build the Elasticsearch container. And we have changed Liferay Tomcat 1 and Liferay Tomcat 2 as well. Let's build them. Okay, the images, the containers have been built, and I can now start them up. I actually like to start all of them independently, even though we have declared all of the dependencies so that they would just start automatically. Now with Liferay Tomcat 1 started and with Liferay Tomcat 2 started, I can check that both are running by accessing Liferay Tomcat 1 in my Firefox, and so that I can log in to both. Liferay Tomcat 2 in my Chromium. This means that the cookies that both go for localhost don't clash on each other, so I can easily sign in to both. And now I can test that my Elasticsearch actually works. So let's go ahead with one test and add, let's say, just some web content. I'll do that just here on this page, and I've prepared a little bit. Let's just post some random content on the page, and this random content and I've prepared something. Proper text, which we then can search for. Publish. Now the very first test that we can do in our cluster is we can go to Liferay Tomcat 2 and reload the page and make sure that the content is shown there as well, because after all we're in a cluster, and changes to one machine should immediately appear on the other machine. So indeed we have this new text here, and it's both the same, and I can make them look the same by just removing the toolbar on the side, and we're now on the other server. Now let's see if both are also accessing the same search server, and we'll do that here by just going for one of those words in there, and I'm searching for some random content. Now apparently my virtual machine is a little bit slow, because it might just page stuff in and out of the memory. But you see the machine that I have added the content on can obviously find the content, which is a sign that the Elasticsearch index is being used and utilized. And that's basically expected because this machine posted the article and is obviously accessing the same search server, the same search index as it did when it indexed. Now let's go with the same test here. And again, my virtual machine in which I'm recording is a little bit underpowered with memory. And here we are. This means we can find the article that we have created on one server. We can find that on the other. That sounds like proper clustering. Another test that we can do for making sure that our clustering works is, if you remember the previous exercise, then we can check for our content being available on both machines. If you remember, we have uploaded the hello text document on one machine, and right now I'm finally happy to demonstrate that I can download some content on one machine. So there is hello text. This was on Liferay Tomcat 1. And I can download hello text on Liferay Tomcat 2 as well. And just saying that Chromium works a little bit different, but there it is as well. So proper cluster test with Elasticsearch with a document library, and that concludes our exercise.